In this video, we address the present active indicative and the future active indicative of the Koine Greek verbal system. If you have not yet read the third chapter of Black's grammar yet, I'd encourage you to stop the video here and go read the chapter from the grammar first, because what we're going to be doing in these videos is sort of summarizing, overviewing, and practicing the things that you learn from that grammar. It will behoove you to have read that information first, especially because there's sort of more of a depth to what Black does, that when you present something in writing, it's much easier to give depth than when you present something when you are speaking it. So the purpose of these videos is to sort of try and simplify some of the concepts from Black and try and make them memorable for you in different kinds of ways. And one of the ways that we're going to do that is by speaking and writing the paradigms or the different kinds of information that is presented in Black's grammar. So that being said, you'll also need your whiteboard for what we're going to do in this video, or a piece of paper. So if you don't have a whiteboard or you don't have a piece of paper and a pen, go ahead and pause this video and go grab that before we get started here. And so what we're going to be dealing with is the present active indicative and the future active indicative of the Greek verbal system. And you'll remember from last week when we talked about this overview of verbs, we talked about Greek being a highly inflected language. And you're going to probably get sick of hearing me saying this, because I'm going to sound a bit like a broken record, repeating this claim that Greek is a highly inflected language many times, because it's very important for your understanding of Greek and your ability to translate Greek well. And what we mean by Greek being a highly inflected language is that the different words, verbs, and nouns will change their form on the basis of how they are functioning grammatically in a sentence. So words will look different based on what they are doing or the purpose they are serving in a sentence. So it's very important for us to be attuned to how a word is changing and why it is changing the way it is. Particularly for this video, the main changes we're going to see are with respect to person and with respect to number. That verbs conjugate in different ways based on their person and their number, and also based on their tense, their voice, and their mood. But at this point in the semester, we are only dealing with the active voice and the indicative mood. We will get a different tense. We'll get two tenses in this video, namely the present and the future. And so after we talk about the present, we'll talk about how Greek inflects to form the future of the active indicative. But we're going to start with the present active indicative. And when we're talking about present, we are talking about the tense, the time of the action. Active refers to the voice of the action, how the action of the verb relates to the subject of the sentence. And indicative refers to the mood, that is, how the action of the verb is viewed. In the case of the indicative, it is viewed as real. It is indicated as actually happening or will happen in the future. And so we get these different endings for the present active indicative, and these are the endings that are going to be stuck onto a Greek verb stem to make the entire verb. So what we have here with luo, which is the way you will see the Greek verb presented in a dictionary or a lexicon in its first person singular present active indicative form. So luo is the first person singular present active indicative form, meaning I release or I loose. And then these different endings that indicate the different persons and numbers are added on to the ending, or they're replaced here. We take off that omega to make the full verb. Luo, lues, lue, luamen, lueti, luusi. And you'll see here this nu is in parentheses. The reason for that is it's called a movable nu. It will be there sometimes and it will not be there other times. It will be there when the next word begins with a vowel to make the verb a little bit easier to pronounce, because it's easier to end a word with a consonant when the next verb starts with a vowel. And when the next word starts with a consonant, the nu will not be there. And so if we're to sort of put this endings into an algebraic format here, what we have is the stem, we have a connecting vowel added to the stem, and then the ending added to that connecting vowel. In 4 of the cases of our paradigm for this week, the connecting vowel and the ending are already together. In the case of o, ice, a, and then over here in the third person plural with usi. That is not the case with min and te. And so what you see in our different paradigms is that we have amen and eti, this omicron and this epsilon, representing our connecting vowel from over here. And so what you can do with any verb then is take the stem of any verb and stick it there, add the connecting vowel and the endings to it, and you get the different person and number of these different verbs. So here we have luo, I lose, and here we have grapho, I write. And then by adding these endings on, we can you can indicate who is doing the writing. I, you, he, she, it, we, you all, or they. And so what we're going to do is practice these different endings by both speaking them first and then by writing them. And so the way this is going to work is the first time is I'm going to speak it, and we're going to get progressively faster. We're going to do it 3 different times. The first time I'm going to do it slowly, and you'll repeat after me each one. The second time I'll do all 3 of these so a little bit faster. Then you'll repeat these 3 and then these 3. And then the last time I will say all 6 of them, and you will repeat all 6 of them in a sort of chanting format. And the chanting format is very intentional. The more rhythmic we can be, the easier it is to memorize these endings. So I'm going to start. Once again, we're going to do it slowly. On this first time, you're going to repeat after me for each one of the endings. So what we have is O, ice, I, men, te, usi. Okay, on the second time, I'm going to say the first 3, and then you repeat all 3 after me. O, ice, I, men, te, usi. And in our last one here, I'm going to do all 6, and then you can repeat all 6 after me. I encourage you to try and do it 2 or 3 times in the repetition here. O, ice, I, men, te, usi. Very good. And so now we're going to move to some writing practice. So I want you to grab your whiteboards. And the way that I formulate the paradigm for Greek verbs, at least for indicative verbs, which is all we have at this point in this semester, is with a simple chart like this. And you can, if you want to, put a little S and a little P at top to indicate singular and plural, and then a 1, 2, 3 over here. And what I want you to do is, again, chant those endings. O, ice, I, men, te, usi. O, ice, I, men, te, usi. And now see if you can put them, write them down onto the whiteboard, having chanted them. And then I want you to go ahead and once you've done it once, check yourself, and then go back and see if you can do it again without reference to the actual paradigm. So try it once here, and then I'm going to give you the answer. Then I'm going to ask you to pause the lecture, erase, and try again. So what you should have is this. O, ice, I, men, te, usi. So what I want you to do is one more time, pause, erase, and go ahead and try and write these one more time. All right, let's move on to the future active indicative, which is going to look very, very similar to the present active indicative. Once again, when we're talking about the future, we're talking about the tense, We're talking about the tense of the verb. When we say active, we mean the voice of the verb. And when we say indicative, we mean the mood of the verb. And what's going to tell us that we are in the future tense for the active indicative is what is called the tense formative sigma. So the sigma in the middle of a verb is going to tell us that we have the future here. And so what we have is, you can see here, that sigma is just stuck in before our endings here. And to put this into our sort of algebraic terms. We have the stem, we have sigma, we have a connecting vowel, and we have an ending. And this is all well and good, all very simple when it comes to a verb like luso, where the vowel, where the stem ends in a vowel. But when it comes to other kinds of words, namely words that end in these letters over here, something is going to happen that is called amalgamation. These letters don't really like to combine, they don't like to be side by side with a sigma. And so what they do is they form a new letter that keeps that sigma sound in it, so that especially when you speak or you hear Greek, you can recognize the future by the sigma sound still being in the word. But when you read it or when you look at it, you have to know that these changes have occurred and that the sigma is sort of embedded in the results here. So a P, a beta, or a phi, when a sigma is added to it in the root, we're going to get a psi. When a kappa, gamma, or a chi, when a sigma is added to these letters, we get an xi. And then with a tau, a delta, or a theta, the tau, the delta, or the theta is going to drop out, and just the sigma is going to be left. And so I give you some examples of these three over here with pimpso. So you can hear in that pimpso the sigma sound still in there. The same with oxo, you hear that sigma sound in there. And with peso, the theta has dropped out and we still have that sound in there. There are a number of words that have idzo as their ending in the present active indicative, that we see that zeta, but the root of the verb is actually a delta. And so what we're going to see is that words that end in idzo are also going to drop out that letter in the future. So you have baptizo instead of baptizo. And so what I want you to do here is I've given you 6 algebra problems, as it were. What I want you to do is pause the lecture, keeping this up on the screen, and on your whiteboard, just write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and write the combination that we're going to have as a result of these different things without reference to your notes at this point, or without reference to what I just showed you or what you have read in Black's grammar. See if you can do it do it cold, as it were. And if you can't, that's okay. It's best that you make a guess. When you make a guess and correct yourself, you're more likely to remember it the next time. So what I want you to do is take about a minute here, pausing the lecture and answering these questions before I give you a little bit of help. All right, now I'm going to give you a little bit of help here for you to be able to do some self-correction. So now that we have, once again, our sort of cheat sheet or our equations up here, I want you to pause the lecture, check yourself, see how you did, and make some corrections. So if you got things wrong, erase it out and write the proper answer here. And so having done this, having made a guess and correcting yourself, or made a guess and confirming that your answer was right, it's more likely that you're going to be able to remember these in the future. And in the quiz for this week, this is going to be one of the topics that is on here. You may potentially see something like, when a kappa and a sigma come together, what letter is formed? And you will have to put in or choose in multiple choice format an xc. The other paradigm that we want to get up here, and the other one that you need to memorize for this week, that you might be asked to reproduce, or you might be asked to reproduce elements of on the quizzes for this week, is the present indicative of eİmī. So with the verb luo, which we were just looking at the paradigm for, we have what is called the omega conjugation. That is one of the major conjugations in Greek. The other major conjugation in Greek is the μη conjugation. We'll talk about μη verbs more in greater depth later on in the semester. But the εἰμί verb, or the μη verb εἰμί, is the to be verb in Greek. And so what we have here is the present indicative paradigm of eİmī. Notice that there is no voice here. There's no active, middle, or passive. That is because a to be verb doesn't have voice. It's not acted upon as in a passive, but it just simply doesn't have voice. So with eİmī, you're never going to give voice parsing information. And so here I give you the paradigm. I'm going to say it out loud here. eİmī, estin, esmen, esti, eisen. And just as we did with the other paradigm, we're going to do a little bit of speaking practice here. So 3 times, I'm going to say each one slowly. And then on the second time through, I'll say 3 slowly, and you'll repeat 3 after me, and then 3 after me. And then I'll say all 6 on the third time, and you can repeat after me. So this first one, repeat after me for each word. eİmī, estin, esmen, esti, eisen. All right, in our second go through, I'm going to say the first 3. You repeat the first 3 after me. Then I'll say the second 3. You repeat the second 3 after me. eİmī, estin, esmen, esti, eisen. And in our third go through, I'm going to say all 6, and you repeat all 6 after me. eİmī, estin, esmen, esti, eisen. And one more time, we're going to get some writing practice here, in this case with the paradigm of eİmī. So you may want to say it out loud one more time. eİmī, estin, esmen, esti, eisen. And now see if you can write it on your whiteboard correctly on the first try. This is what it should look like. eİmī, estin, esmen, esti, eisen. If it doesn't look like this, that's okay. Go ahead and correct your work on the whiteboard, and then we'll move on. So the last thing we're going to do here is talk about parsing. Parsing is something that you're going to be asked to do often on both quizzes and homework, and then also in this format for the videos. So I've given us 5 different words here. I'm going to say them: luo, luusi or luusin, eİmī, eisi or eisen, and graphomen. So what I want you to do is go ahead and write these words down on your whiteboard and see if you can identify these things. So when we parse a verb, these are the things we're looking for: tense, voice, mood, person, and number. So I'm going to give you this hint here before I set you loose to do this, that remember at this point in the semester, as far as voice goes, we are only in the active voice. For mood, we've only seen the indicative mood so far. So our differences are going to be in the person, in the number, and in the tense. And then remember, there are some peculiarities about the to be verb with respect to voice as well. So go ahead and take a few minutes pausing the lecture and giving the parsing information for these, and we'll come back in and check on them. So your answers should look something like this. You may have spelled this all out. You can either abbreviate or spell these things out. Either way, it's fine with me, especially for the purposes of practice. But what this indicates is present active indicative, PAI, first person singular. So over here we have O, indicating the first person singular. For luusin, we have a present active indicative, third person plural. Our ending over here, third person plural, usin. And then eİmī is where we have something just a touch tricky. We have a present indicative. There's no voice with the to be verb, remember. And then first person singular. Eisen should be present indicative, third person plural. And then graphomen is present active indicative, first person plural. Notice our men ending here. All right, that's all we have for the present active indicative, the future active indicative. Next up is second declension nouns.